This short video describes how to create a bar graph on Excel. Bar graphs are often used in psychological research, and each bar typically represents different groups or different measurements. For example, this bar graph represents different age groups ask the question or the statement, I find it difficult to do what I should at school, work, or home because of drug use. And this is the percentage of people that agreed. And one can see that this increases in the teens and 20s and decreases in later age groups. So for the example for this demonstration, let's say we're going to run an experiment on the effectiveness of an antidepressant. And we're going to look at different doses of the medication. We have three groups. One we'll call the control group. They'll get a pill, but it'll be a placebo. Essentially, it'll have no active ingredient. It has 0 milligrams of antidepressants. Group 2 gets 10 milligrams of the antidepressant, and group 3 gets 20 milligrams of the antidepressant. And let's say after 6 weeks of taking these medication, we give people a test. We give them the Beck's Depression Inventory, which is really commonly used to diagnose symptoms of depression. So the Beck's Depression Inventory has several questions. It has 21, and people rate from 0 to 3 on these symptoms. I do not feel sad, I feel sad, or number 2, I am sad all the time and can't snap out of it. 3, I am so sad and unhappy that I can't stand it. People take this and they get scores, and you can see that the scores might range from 0 to 10. These are the normal ups and downs. Way up here, if the scores get up into 31 to 40, severe depression. So let's go look at an Excel spreadsheet of what the data might look like. So here's the data sheet. And if you look down here, here are different folders. Here's the line graph data, here's the bar graph data, and the scatter plot data. And here we have 3 different groups with scores on the Beck's Depression Inventory. And what we can see here is that we have a total of 60 people that we are running in our experiment. We have 20 in the control group who get 0 milligrams, 20 that get 10, and 20 that get the 20 milligram dose. Now I'm just making these data up for the reason of making a graph. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take an average score for each group. Again, average. And then I just simply highlight the entire column, press enter, and I get an average score. I then can go here and I can copy, highlight and paste, or I can drag it over, which gives me the same data. Now I want to show you how to add an error bars. So I need another column, another row for an error bar. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to go down here and say insert, and I'm going to shift down. And now I have another place to put data. Still, I'm averaging. Now the error bars that I prefer to use, people use different error bars. Standard deviation is a common error bar. I think standard deviations get a little large for my taste. Another common one used is known as standard error, or one standard error. And the formula for one standard error, it's a little complicated, so we're going to go through it nice and slow. So I'm going to say equals. Now the standard error is the standard deviation divided by the square root of the count. So let's see how that's done. So if I push equal, and every time you do a formula you have to push equal, standard deviation, ST DEV, parentheses, and then I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to write parentheses, divided by, and that is a slash divided by the square root SQRT of the count, and that's just how many people. We have 20 people. It's the square root of how many people we have. Square root of the count, and we highlight again. Right parentheses, but we're going to have to add another parentheses. So let's go through this formula again. Again, it's a little complicated, but it makes a very nice error bar. It's the standard deviation, which is a measure of variance, standard deviation of all these numbers, divided by the square root SQRT of the count of all of the participants. In other words, it's a square root of 20. Standard deviation divided by the square root of 20 because we have 20 people. Press enter, and then I'm just going to pull this over, and this will give us a nice error bar. Let's go ahead and make our graph. I'm going to highlight this, including the different titles, go to Insert, then over here to Bar. These are bar graphs. Click on it, and now you can make three-dimensional ones that look kind of pretty. Those are kind of nice, huh? I prefer just straight ones. Now I'm going to add my axes. Always have to label axes, so important. This is the BDI score. And down here it's the milligrams of the antidepressant. And you can put a title on this. For this, I'm not going to have a title. Just decide not to. Now there's going to be some things I want to change. For example, I'm going to come here. I'm going to go over and make a nice, I double clicked, and then I came over here and I want a nice solid line on my y-axis. I just think it looks better. And I want a nice solid line on my x-axis. Again, I tend to get rid of these bars. You can keep them. It's fine. It's a preference. I think they look fine in or not in, but I take them out. I'm going to come over to Home, and I'm going to increase my font a little. Got to be able to read it. Okay. Now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to change the color of these bars because they represent different things to me. This is a choice that I'm making. You can change the color or you cannot change the color. I'm going to change the color. And because they have different doses, I'm going to change the color based on a grayscale of different colors. So if I click on this, I get all of them highlighted. And if I come over here and I go fill and I go solid, I can change them all. But I don't want to change them all. So let's do this. Double click, and now you can see these little dots. That means it's the only one, because this one has this has 0 drugs. I'm going to put this as a very, very light gray. And because this one has more drug, this is a personal choice, I'm going to put it as a darker gray. And because this one has the most drug, I'm going to leave it as black. Now, another thing I'd like to do is I'm going to click on all of them because I think I would like a solid border around them because I think borders look nice. And I'm going, if you see here, you can see the thickness of the border. I'm going to bump that up a little bit. And now we have a nice thick line around it. Okay, these each have lines. Again, it's a preference. But now let's do error bars. Error bars are a little complicated, so let's take our time. I'm going to highlight them all again. I'm going to come up, it says chart design. I'm going to come over here to add element, add chart element. I'm going to go all the way down to error bars, and I'm going to come over here and go to more error bars. It's going to give me just these big error bars here, but I want to choose what my error bars are going to be. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them only above. I'm going to come down here to custom. I'm going to click specific, and you can see here, see that? Delete it, and then I'm going to highlight my standard error. And if you wanted to do above and below, you can add that there as well. And you can see a nice, pretty error bar that is a reflection of standard deviation. And it's very informative to people to see the level of error, the level of variation, because if you look at the data here, there's some good variation. Some people in this group with 20 milligrams had a relatively high moderate depression rating, but some of them are really very low. Other people over here are high and some of them are low. That is the variability in the data, which is represented in this error bar. Okay? Okay. Now, a couple things to think about. Sometimes it's best to do the full range of the BIDR scores. So I can click on this, come over here, and I can change this axis. And I could say options, axis options. Let's go all the way up to maybe 40, which isn't the actual max, but you can see it's the max on the scale. And if I do that, you can see that it gives us the full range a little bit more. If you just went up to 30, it might give the impression that the depression is higher than it was. Okay, so we like our graph here, looks pretty good. We could change colors if we wanted to, that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my font is nice and black because I think that looks good. Black font. The font is 12, which is pretty good size. I'm going to copy it. Copy. Going to come into my worksheet. Paste my graph. I can right click, I can just go over here and I can paste, and there's my pretty graph. Now, let's answer some questions. What are the levels of the independent variable? Independent variable is the thing we change between the groups. This is 0 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. Those are the different levels, amount of antidepressant. What is the dependent variable? That's the BDI scores. What information can you gather from looking at this graph? Well, what I can gather, I haven't done statistics, so I can't say it that the results are supported with statistics, but just visually I could say getting no antidepressant. If my group started off with levels of depression, I might say the group that got nothing had higher BDI scores than the people who got 10 milligrams. But the people who got 10 milligrams still had higher BDI scores, depression scores, than the people who got 20 milligrams. So just looking at the graph, I could say that this antidepressant tends to work, and 20 milligrams has a better effect than 10 milligrams. Again, I'm going to need to run some statistics. All right? Well, that's how you make bar graphs with one standard error bars.